Well, under the typical Conservation Reserve Program, contract farmland is placed in CRP for a 10-year period. Contract extensions are available, but what happens if the ground is sold, even though several years still remain on those contracts? Well, joining us now for today's Rural Money segment is Roger McEowen with the Washburn University School of Law. Roger, as always, thanks for joining us. So what are some of the consequences for the early termination?
Hi, Janet. Good to be with you today. And this is a particular concern, not so much now, but when crop prices are high, people tend to want to get their CRP land out of the CRP and take part of those higher market prices instead of receiving that set rental amount from the government. But when they do that, there's a big penalty that you have to pay. And the penalty is that the CRP enrolled land that's now out, the landowner has to pay back to the USDA all of the CRP rents that they already received, plus interest and liquidated damages, which might be waived. But that's a huge penalty. And then you have to sort out the tax consequences associated with removal of the land from the CRP.
Now, can you speak to the sale price allocation to CRP contracts?
Yeah, that gets into the tax issue indeed, and the IRS has ruled in the past that a taxpayer in one instance who sold the right to 90% of the revenue from 3 CRP contracts that had about 11 years remaining, they had the 10-year contract plus extensions, they had to report that lump sum payment as ordinary gross income in the year of receipt. And they made some arguments, but the IRS disagreed with that, and there are some court opinions that uphold that too. And another thing that is associated with this is that if the acquiring farmer, let's say you sell the contract, you sell the land to somebody else, and it doesn't stay in the CRP, the farmer that buys the land may pay those early termination costs. And if that's the situation, then that payment should be considered part of the land, and it's an additional cost incurred to acquire full rights in the property.
So what if early termination costs are incurred solely to allow the sale of the farm? Does that happen?
Yeah, if I want to get my land out so that I can sell it, and I've got to pay early termination costs to do that, then those costs should be added into the basis of the farmland and deducted as part of the sale.
And as far as early termination payments, do those work generally as you would expect, or is there something interesting about those as well?
Well, the early termination payments, what we're dealing with there is, in terms of sorting out the tax consequences, are appropriate deductions and inclusion in income. In general, you're going to report the income that you receive in the year of receipt. You're not going to be able to spread it out over the length of any contract term in general. There are exceptions to this. And there may be a deduction if you have to pay a cancellation fee to get out from underneath the CRP contract. You might be allowed a deduction for giving up a future benefit. But in all of these situations, especially with CRP, farmers that are doing this and not going to term on the contract need to find tax counsel to help them through and sort the results out.
All right, Roger, as always, thank you very much for your insight. Roger McEowen with Washburn University School of Law on the phone with us today from Topeka, Kansas.